brings you here this late in the night? Your car broke down in the middle of the road, and you have called a mechanic. Very well. I do not mind the company at all. Please forgive me. I am Prince Vlad at your service. And I bid you welcome to my house. Do come in and leave some of the happiness you bring. Why do I wear sunglasses at night? No, that is a very valid question, and I do not mind answering. You see, my eyes are very sensitive to the light. Candlelight, sunlight, all kind of light. And it is very painful to look at it. I understand that it is bad manners not to make eye contact with your guests. So I shall remove them for you this time. Please do not be alarmed. It's okay. I will not bite you. Come in. I do hope you find your meal pleasurable. And you must forgive me if I do not join you, but I have already dined. May I offer you a drink? Sure. This is one of the finest of its kind. No, I never drink wine. Oh, what the hell. I will make an exception just for you today. But I usually never drink wine. Here's to your health. Good. Very good. It looks like we're going to spend a couple of moments together. Perhaps you will allow me to read to you while you wait for your mechanic. Excellent. I just so happen to have some books right here with me. I have selected poetry and prose of Poe right here. And I also have strange tales of mystery and imagination. Which one will you like me to read from? Strange tales? That's a very good choice. Perhaps we will read Poe at a later time. Where is my wine? Cheers again, eh? I'll be honest with you, I never drink this stuff, but it's pretty good. Salud. Very well. Strange tales of mystery and imagination by A.S.M.R. We will read perhaps one of the stories, as many of them in here. What about the bleeding house of mystery? That sounds about right. The bleeding house of mystery. The strange disappearance of Buford and Ellen Penrose was a haunting, unsolved mystery for 8 years, until the awful night when blood began dripping from the ceilings of their home, sending the gathering of fashionable dinner guests fleeing in horror. The stately plantation house in Oakdale, Georgia was built in 1873 on the site of the original house destroyed by General Sherman's Yankees in the Civil War. The house, which a Penrose ancestor had named Six Pines, had sat unoccupied for 7 years, the period of time it took for the law to officially declare the vanished Penrose legally dead. Even after those 7 years, the Penrose relatives refused to take over the house because of the tales of terror surrounding the old place. Even Buford's brother, big, laughing Jake Penrose, a gallant World War I brigadier general with a no-nonsense manner, refused to spend even one night in the Six Pines. There's something in that house which isn't right, Jake told Paul Fordyce, the Buford family lawyer. There is evil there. I can sense it. I can even smell it. It's the smell of blood. Fordyce. Blood. But tales of ghosts and evil didn't faze Mr. and Mrs. Carlos and Karen Palmer. This young, very fashionable couple fell in love with the house the first time they set eyes on it. Corliss had made his money during the war, supplying cotton to the army, and beautiful Karen had a well earned reputation as gracious and elegant hostess. This house is just perfect, she told her husband. What wonderful parties we shall have here, Corliss. The Palmers negotiated the purchase of 6 pines from Paul Fordyce in October 1928 for a fraction of its true value. The delighted Karen immediately began planning lavish renovations. If there are any spooks here, she joked, all this new paint, woodwork, and furniture will soon drive them out. She was wrong, as events were soon to demonstrate. Within a few days of the Palmers moving in, something in the house seemed intent on expressing its evil presence. Fluffy, the family cat, began to bristle, arching his back and hissing at unseen intruders. Then the Palmers awoke one rainy, blustery morning in late October. Just a few weeks after they moved in, they found their pet stone cold dead and stretched out across the foot of their bed. Christine, the maid, was summoned to remove it. She went to pick up Fluffy's lifeless body and suddenly screamed and fell, swooning across a dressing table. Smelling salts under her nose brought her around. Did you hear that? I thought I heard murmur. It is a big old castle, anyhow. Where was I? Oh, yes. Smelling salts under her nose brought her around. Revived, eyes round with fear, she sat up, trembling. I felt something touch my arm, she whispered. It felt cold and wet, like a dead fish. I saw a man's hand and it had been cut off at the wrist. She stopped, ashen-faced. She became hysterical again, screaming a long, shuddering scream. Karen Palmer slapped her face and she stopped. You stupid girl, Karen said sternly. You're getting hysterical over a dead cat. She pulled the maid to her feet and waved her out of the room. Rest. I don't want to see you again until you have calmed down. But I saw it, the poor girl sobbed. Karen Palmer, now thoroughly angry, waved her away. The stricken maid wailed and fled down the hallway towards the servants' quarters, sobbing into her hands. All that fuss over a dead cat. I am getting rid of that useless girl, Karen told her husband. But Corliss Palmer, pale-faced, didn't appear to be listening. He gently picked Fluffy up in his hands. I'll take him into the pecan grove and bury him, he said. Yes, Karen agreed. Please do that. Then she shivered and pulled her robe tightly around her. Are you all right? Corliss asked. Of course, his wife replied, but she shivered again. There was a clammy feeling at the back of her neck, as though she had been stroked with ice. This house is so drafty, she said, especially on cold mornings like this. Corliss Palmer didn't reply, but his strong face was troubled as he opened the bedroom door and made his way downstairs and out to the pecan grove at the end of the extensive garden. During the following months, there were no more apparitions and no more hysterical maids. The old house creaked and groaned as old houses do, and sometimes, as the Palmers sat down to dinner, they could hear thumping noises coming from their bedroom. It's as if someone is being chopped into pieces with an axe, Christine muttered one night as she was serving dessert. A comment that earned her another stinging rebuke. Despite everything that had happened, the Palmers loved Six Pines. After 6 months of renovation work, they decided to invite all of their friends, including their new neighbors, for an elaborate housewarming. Now Karen was truly in her element. She had learned how to entertain at her mother's knee, and she planned an evening that would be the talk of Georgia's society for months. There were 80 names on the guest list: industrialists, politicians, military men, writers and artists, the cream of Southern society, including an up-and-coming novelist named Ernest Hemingway, and a young professional soldier, George Patton. Karen also sent an invitation to Paul Fordyce by way of thanking the slight, balding lawyer for negotiating the purchase of Six Pines for them at at such reasonable price. Would you mind turning your mobile off while I read? It is distracting, and it startled me a little. Just because I'm Dracula, it does not mean I do not get startled also. Where was I? Oh, yes. Karen also sent an invitation to Paul Fordyce by way of thanking the slight, balding lawyer for renegotiating the purchase of 6 pines for them at such a reasonable price. That dinner would have been memorable for its fine food and even finer conversation alone. But it was the terror that struck the last dishes were being cleared that branded that evening into minds of everyone present. It was one of the women guests, her name unfortunately lost to history, who suddenly screamed, a sound like a banshee wail. So awful was its desolation, and pointed to a great blob of scarlet on the crisp tablecloth. There were gasps and more screams as the guests looked from the ugly stain towards its source. On the ceiling was a bright red patch that visibly widened before their eyes. From its center dripped gray drops of blood, each one splashing wetly onto the surface of the table. There's some deviltry at work here, by God, George Patton yelled. He drew his Colt .45 automatic. Bellowing, he led a charge upstairs. Corliss Palmer and a few other brave souls, emboldened by bourbon and fine wine, were at his heels. Lawyer Fordyce didn't move. Frozen in his chair, he trembled violently, his narrow, pinched face as white as death. Within a few minutes, Patton, noisy and rambunctious, led his troops back downstairs. "The master bedroom is up there," he said, pointing to the stain with the muzzle of his revolver. We looked inside and we saw nothing. There's no blood, nothing at all on the floorboards or on the rugs. I am damned if I know where the hell this mess is coming from. Suddenly, Paul Fordyce stood bolt upright, looked towards where Patton was standing, and wailed, "No, not you! Oh my God, not you!" The old man clutched at his heart and collapsed onto his chair. It was shockingly evident that he had just suffered a massive stroke. "Damn," the crestfallen Major Patton said. "I didn't mean to scare the poor old bugger." Fordyce was rushed to a hospital in Atlanta, where doctors battled to save his life. But it became clear very quickly that he would not recover. However, he did live long enough to confess to a terrible deed. He revealed that he'd been quietly embezzling the Penrose funds for years. When Buford Penrose uncovered it, he had confronted Fordyce and threatened him with prison. Terrified, unable to make restitution, Fordyce surprised the couple in their bedroom one night in 1921 and shot them both to death. Then he hacked their bodies into pieces with an axe and threw the remains into the nearby Savannah River. On the night of the dinner party, after the red stain appears, I saw a terrible night. On the night of the dinner party, after the red stains appeared, I saw a terrible sight. The old man whispered. I looked over and saw Buford and Ellen Penrose standing beside that soldier. They were cut to pieces, bleeding. Paul Fordyce sat up in bed, eyes wide with horror. His breath rattled in his throat. He fell back and died. The lawyer's confession explained the Penrose disappearance. But no one, then or now, has been able to logically explain the red stain on the ceiling and the blood that dripped from there onto Karen Palmer's immaculate white linen tablecloth. I hope you enjoy that. I do not usually have guests, and you can understand how difficult it is to entertain. Seeing I don't have a television or what do you call computer. More wine. I shall have another also. Not bad. Not bad at all. Well, I think your mechanic is here. Yes. Go ahead. You do not offend me by leaving. I am used to solitude, and I welcome it. I will stay here enjoying some of this fine wine. Perhaps you can come back when I have not dined. Ah. See you soon.